All right, we are live. I know that's the obligatory thing that we have to say, but that's letting everybody on the Hangout know that we are officially streaming. Okay, so I don't have my usual guest today, and that's because we kind of had a little bit of an argument on Twitter. Um, and everything that I despise about Cult of Ham's style of arguing, and I have explicitly stated numerous occasions, you cannot argue against, or you cannot use the point of contention against someone's argument. Right? If this is the point that you're trying to decide, or I'm on one side, you're on the other side, you can't state the point of contention in order to refute my argument. You have to refute my argument as it is. You can't. Like if we're arguing that Batman is better than Superman. You say Batman's better than Superman. I say, okay, well, Superman has this power, this power, and this power. And you say, yeah, but Batman's better than Superman. That isn't an argument. You can't keep doing that. You can't argue as if that is the case, and that's the reason Superman can't be better than Batman. Because, oh, but Batman's better. That's what essentially was going on in the Twitter. I pointed this out. I gave them 3 opportunities. I said, point it out in 3 different ways, and they kept doing this, and so it got on my nerves. And I'm like, oh, dude, I'm done. I'm done. I deal with enough of this I deal with enough leftists. I deal with enough people on the other side. I deal with Ham on a constant basis making these types of arguments. The other thing is they started making the issue about me and what, and they were trying to say that because this particular argument was about religion, they were trying to say that I was getting emotional about the issue and that I was defying logic and that I was using invalid arguments for my position, and that they were just, oh well, you can't use that because of whatever reason. Right? They didn't provide any valid reasons, and I was pointing that out continually, and they were continually telling me that I was arguing from emotion, and that I was the one arguing in bad faith. So, that's the reason that S-Man and Josselman and any of these other guys are not here tonight. I'm still on good terms with Loudmouth. I'm still on good terms with Zach and a couple of the other guys in that group, but the majority of them I will not be hanging out with, especially so like. And then they did a stream about me the other day, and they mentioned all of this, and Josselman and S-Man were entirely strawmanning my argument and also spreading misinformation about what I had actually said, and other people in that group jumped on board and were like, oh, I can't believe you said this. And I'm like, look at the tweets, look at this thread. I didn't say that once. Look at the thread, look at what I've said. Don't judge me based on what they said I said. Judge me based on what I said. Anyway, so the actual point of this stream, or at least this is what we tried to figure out last week, is we are going to be taking a few minutes and describing our own personal government. This has kind of been changing a little bit throughout the week. So at first it was, if I was president, what would I do? That was kind of the foundation of this. But I've opened it up to if I was king for a day type of thing. If I had a magic wand and I could say, okay, this is what my government's going to do, this is what we're not going to do. If you set your argument up to be more like if I was president, this is what I would do, then sorry about that, but hopefully that's not going to change your view too much. But the idea was to take about 5 minutes, present your little pitch for a government, and then you're supposed to take a minute or two and say, but here's an area where this type of government will probably fail. This is an area where this government is suspect to falling apart, or an area that we're going to have to strive really, really hard to maintain. So,
right, I'll take the lowest hanging fruit on this one. Direct democracy.
Direct democracy. Okay. So you mean direct democracy as far as voting?
Yes, the people vote and make the laws themselves.
Okay. So that's so you want to start us off then? Or are you just saying, is there more to
Direct democracy is what the ancient Greeks did first, is that they created a system of pure democracy where the people to use the leftist term, created laws and voted on them publicly. Of course, the I believe that the wink wink. I believe that the good to this system is that it's not you don't have any threat of an elitist class of coming about. You essentially have a society where the people make the rules, the people decide on what each other needs, and you have a society which is based on mutual trust. While there are problems, I do believe, wink, that that a direct democracy system would work best for America.
Now, are we allowed to rebut his argument or his stance, or is all on
Well,
him?
I would say so. First, I would say, what are the problems that you see with that system? What like so first Aspie's gonna say poke holes in his own, because I know you've done the wink wink and you're like, yeah, this is so where's the first major fault with that way that system would work?
The only problem I could see is that it would be a little bit unstable or chaotic at certain points, because you don't have there is no like one leader directing everybody. But I think that can be mitigated with like you could negotiate some balance with a limited leader, somebody who would like everybody would vote on who would create a. That's my only problem, is that it could be a bit chaotic at certain points.
It really could.
Okay. So now we're gonna open it up for other people to criticize the direct democracy.
Can I go?
Yes.
All right. Aspie, you said that a direct democracy is basically immune to developing a classist architecture, right?
Yeah, it won't create an elite class.
Okay, I'm going to dispute that and say that it inevitably will. Right? All you need in a direct democracy is 51% of the people looking out for their own interests, and the other 49% become the lower caste. True, it can potentially flip, but as long as 51% of the people make all the rules, looking out for their own interests, the other 49 can basically devolve so far that they're just slave labor.
Well, so if you look throughout history, the elite class has always been negotiated with a government. The hierarchy has always been of the government of a particular. You had the reason why the king was the top is because people said the king was at the top. The first king, like you go back to the Old Testament of the Bible, King Saul was the only reason why
That's
King
not
Saul
the sorry. That's not the first king. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I know. Well, I know that's not the first king. I'm sorry. I need to read up on my theology. But at the same time, Saul was a king. Solomon. Sorry, Solomon. Yeah, Solomon was.
No, Saul was before that. Sorry.
Solomon wasn't the first
Saul was the
several other
first king in the Bible, but there were kings prior to that, like King Nebuchadnezzar
First
and
king of the nation of Israel.
No, Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon. I'm talking about the first king of Israel.
Okay, yeah. First king of Israel was Saul. Yes.
Yeah, the first king of Israel was Saul. That's basically Saul was the first king of Israel, and the only reason why people placed him there was because they wanted it. They didn't want the theocracy that God had given them, which if you read if you believe in Christianity, to them was a perfect system of government, because they got their direction from God. But the problem, but they wanted somebody they could see. They wanted a person that they could directly see when they were when they wanted when to rule over them. So basically they wanted Solomon. So basically they had Saul as so the people eventually put Saul as king, placed Saul at the top as king. So the only reason why hierarchy comes about is because the people have a They place somebody at the top, not because somebody gets to the top.
Well, all right. So I know you're winking, but yeah, right now you don't have to play the devil's advocate per se. So I want to clarify a couple of points. First, I don't think the Greeks started off as a direct democracy. I'm pretty sure it was a republic. Same thing with the Roman Empire. They started off as republics, and they became direct democracies over time. So they started off with a republic with democratic votes, and so
Actually, Athens was a direct democracy. It was Sparta, which was a kind of republican system.
Okay, so yeah, so but the
essentially correct there.
Okay.
Greece was a direct democracy government type, and
Okay.
Rome was a republic.
And Sparta.
Okay.
And then
So there were certain groups within Greek. I thought it was all of Greece, but yeah, I guess. But yeah, Rome started off as a republic, but as they fell into more and more decay, they became more democratic over time, in which case the democracy actually eroded the republic, because the republic is a set of rules. Like with the United States, we've got the Constitution.
Sounds like the U.S.
Yeah, the U.S. We have the Constitution, and we're supposed to adhere to the Constitution, and votes aren't supposed to matter, right? You can have 100% of the people voting to remove the First Amendment, and the First Amendment still shouldn't be removed, right? That's the purpose of the Constitution. Is like, hey, this is set. If you want to change this, yes, you can change parts, or you can add stuff to it. You can't take 100% of the vote and erase this entire Constitution. And yet that's what we're starting to see. We're starting to see, oh, well, we've got enough votes, so we can take away that part of the Constitution. We can ignore that rule.
because getting rid of freedom of speech would exist in itself, because without freedom of speech there would be no direct democracy. It would circumvent the entire purpose of a direct democracy. You wouldn't. So nobody, I don't think, would in their right mind agree to limit certain words or speeches.
Well,
direct
you would think
democracy
so.
is
All right.
Fundamentally unstable form of government.
Yeah, because when you're talking about your form of government, and you're right. All you need is 51%.
I just want to clarify one point on the freedom of speech. It was a democratic republic, started out as a republic, slowly became more democratic as their society went on. They did not necessarily have freedom of speech. They had an elected emperor to start with, and then the emperor was decided that they were chosen by God. That's how they got to that position. So they still had some sort of religious aspect as to where that Republican leader came from, but you could not talk out about him.
Oh yeah, you weren't allowed to talk about the leader of your country.
Worst case, or least case, you'd be put in prison. Worst case, you're stoned to death or crucified or beheaded or something.
Yeah,
that wasn't freedom of speech.
So
even though they were still democratically electing their governors, their senators, their rulers, you couldn't talk bad about them once they're up there.
Hey,
so.
Mind, have you ever been to my channel?
No, I have not, because I just encountered you like less than a week ago when you were on a stream together. So.
Mine.
Oh yeah, it was Aspie's stream.
That stream was so crazy.
All right, I promise I will check it out after this stream. So
I'm
yeah.
gonna toss you a link to the very first video I ever put up there, and it's called Government.
Okay.
Share. Copy.
All right, and so there are a couple more things I want to say about Aspie's proposition here. Sorry, BTK, is that just, yeah. So BTK, what he was talking about is, all you need is 51% of the people voting one way. And if 51% of the people vote one way, they can dictate how the government is structured. So they can impose a rule upon the other 49%. And I would even say that you don't even need 51%. The 51% is what you need for the majority. In most cases, you can get away with 34%. And this is something Yeah, this is so. I've been looking into distributed ledgers, and this is something a lot of those lectures are talking about. The most you can have is a 34% of the group is operating correctly or is operating justly, then you're wait no sorry if 34% of that group is corrupted. That's what it is. It's 34% of any group is corrupted. They can manipulate the entire system.
I see your point about
It's
the tyranny of the majority.
yeah, tyranny of the majority.
All systems have their problems, and
Yeah.
would you rather be ruled over by an elite class?
I think this would eventually. I don't think this would start off as. I don't think this would start off as that. I think this would devolve into there eventually. Given over a time period of 100 years, eventually that direct democracy would become an elitist class of the 34% that are corrupt and want to destroy or want to control the system. They will get their stuff passed more and more. Because this is something, even in the direct democracies, not 100% of the people vote. You're lucky to get about 50% of the vote, right? So 50% of the people are voting, and 34% of them want to control the others. That 34% is going to get their way. That's I don't think there's any way mathematically around that.
Every example of a direct democracy ever has devolved into an oligarchy.
Yeah, so that it can last for a long while, but eventually it will erode, and the more it erodes, the more those people who want to manipulate and control others will find a way to get the system to work in their favor.
Okay, can I quit now?
That's fine. It's that. No.
Oh my gosh, I was playing devil's advocate over here. And
No, that is fine. That is entirely the purpose of this. Is so you to think about these things and like, yes, I think this is a good idea, and I hope that. So I'm gonna not be presenting anarcho-capitalism because the way I was thinking, I was like, oh, I want to do that, but that's not technically a government. That's the anti-government, and you're like, you can't really have rules and a set way of society. If it is a societal structure, but it requires a moral structure which isn't in place. So the government is supposed to be in lieu of a moral structure. Like if you don't have a moral society, government is supposed to be the morality, or where the society gets their morality. So I'm actually going to be arguing for a minarchist government, but
Anarcho-capitalism will fail. I know you don't
Okay.
need the argument, but I'm just
No.
going to ask a quick rebuttal.
okay.
Anarcho-capitalism will fail for the exact same reason that communism will always fail. In theory, on paper, communism is the best form of government. The second you add the human element into it, it becomes murderous. Same thing with anarcho-camp. Anything that is anarchist, as soon as you add the human element of somebody wanting power, it fails.
Yeah. So the idea, this is not my argument for tonight's debate, but I will say the idea behind anarcho-capitalism is making a society where no one can get that power. I don't know if that's possible. I'd like to think it is. There's a lot of good arguments for it.
In an anarcho-capitalist society, that would be a kind of like a republic without central government.
Well,
In order to make sure that nobody can get that power, you'd have to have a police force. To have a police force, you have to have somebody govern the police force.
no. What? That's the.
Not necessarily someone on the police
all right.
force.
Yeah.
But
So
You
we've
have to have somebody.
yeah we've kind of discussed that in previous streams, and I do like this line of thinking, and I think if you join me on later streams, like in other weeks, we will touch on that. But unless somebody else is going to be arguing for anarcho-capitalism, I don't want to spend too much time on that because it's already almost 6:30, and maybe we can end with a stream with that or something along those lines. But BTK, did you want to go, or do you want me to present my actual?
I can go, I guess. I
All right.
would argue for a constitutional federalist republic. All right.
Okay.
So a republic comes from the idea of ruled by the letter of the law. All right. So you
Yes.
have people that come together and they decide what the law is going to be best for their civilization. They write it down, they agree upon it, and it becomes pretty much immutable without severe steps being taken to change it. All right. In a republic, okay, if you can keep the republic, it's the best form of government you can have, considering that there is the human element.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that is because in a democracy, okay, say somebody decides somebody's guilty of something, they form a posse, they go out, they capture him. 51% says he's guilty, they kill him. All right. In a republic, they decide somebody's done something, they form a posse, they go out, they capture him. They can't kill him. There's rules, there's laws, they have to follow the letter of the law. If they don't, then they are guilty,
Mm-hmm.
and society will hold them to the same standard that they just executed the other person for. It is one of the hardest forms of government to keep because of the human factor. But every other form of government fails. Anarchy always becomes an oligarchy. Democracy always falls into anarchy, and then anarchy becomes an oligarchy. Oligarchies, when people want to take them over, they fall into anarchy, and then they either devolve into socialism, which becomes capitalism, which becomes anarchy, which becomes an oligarchy, which becomes socialism. I mean,
Yeah, it's
every
a
other
big
form of
cycle.
government is a cycle. If you can keep a republic where the laws are decided in the beginning, and that's what they are, and there's no major changes to that other than, you know, what is like when our country was formed, we didn't have laws or rules in our Constitution, you know, like the 14th Amendment or other amendments involving equality of the races didn't exist. They were added later because as a society, for the most part, we agreed that it was needed. Big stuff like that you can add in a republic. Other like a democracy, you try to add something like that, you can. Okay, in the republic, we added that we needed to be equal. In a democracy, 51%, or as you stated earlier, 34%, since not everybody votes,
Mm-hmm.
they can decide that we don't need to be equal, and you know, limit the other people, which is why it devolves into an oligarchy. But I'm basically rambling now, so.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. So, and I think you also touched on kind of the downfall of the republic, right? Because you were saying it's the hardest form of government to maintain.
Because of the human element.
Yeah.
I mean, if we
So-
wanted to go with as I stated, you know, before my argument, if we wanted to go with the absolute best form of government on paper, communism. But that's never gonna happen. It literally will never work.
Well, I don't know if it's the best form on paper. I think communism has a lot of flaws that are overlooked on paper. So
But do you know about like how computers network with each other?
yes.
The hierarchy that they follow. If you pay
Well-
attention to how that works, like
w-
one server can't handle the load, it passes it on to the next server. It shares the workload evenly whenever possible. If one server decides that it's got a bug up its butt and it shuts down, the whole system collapses sometimes.
Well, that depends on how it's structured. If you're talking about something like distributed databases and redundancies and
Or
It-
load balancers.
yeah. If you're talking about like an ad hoc setup or like a peer-to-peer network, right? Peer-to-peer network, there is no way to take it down. That is closer to what communism proposes it can do. The problem is that communism is fundamentally flawed in its initial setup, right? From each according to their ability, to each according to their need. The problem is that ability is limited, need is not. That's that's kind of something that's overlooked. Is we've got a limited amount of supply, but there's an infinite amount of demand. Which a network is usually there's more or a network with computers. Usually there's more supply than there is demand. As very rarely is it the case where there's more demand for a particular network than there is the capacity to fill that. When you're talking about a distributed, like a peer-to-peer network, because usually
talk about humanity. If I
Um,
mean, this would be like a new world order kind of crap.
Yeah.
Which would really be the only way that a
It's-
communist society would work. And once again, it won't work because in the human element, people get greedy.
yeah,
Um,
but there's also
the entire world devoted itself to supporting the entire world, and nobody was lazy, and nobody wanted handouts, and nobody wanted more power than the other person.
And nobody had accidents. Nobody got hurt. Nobody ever got sick. Nobody was
Yeah.
ever incapacitated where they can't work.
yeah that's
You just shoot them. They're
well that's so those are the flaws. So even if everyone was benevolent, I still think communism would fail. So even if everyone was acting like I'm supporting everyone else and this is my job, this is my obligation, is to support everyone else, there's only so much you can do to support other people. You're limited on what you can produce and what you can. And the fact that you're constantly giving to other people, it has this odd kind of this counterintuitive. The reason people invent new things is to save themselves. It's like, I'm tired of doing this, I'm gonna find a better way. If you're entirely, I need to sacrifice for myself and I need to give to other people, you're not necessarily looking for more efficient and better ways, but you're like, oh dude, I've been doing this for 2 years, there's got to be a better way of doing this. I'm so tired of doing the same process over and over again. You're going to look for more efficiencies.
You're looking at it from, I mean, I get the angle that you're looking at it from, and it makes sense, but the angle that it's written from is you give and you also get.
Yeah, I understand that you
You're
get.
You're looking at
But
it
you don't
from,
get in
I'm
surplus.
doing
You
But-
get just what you
Yeah, so that's what you, yeah. The surplus.
incentivize
if you
to
get-
work harder or strive harder because you won't get any extra. Your only
Like I said,
incentive is
that's the
helping
human
people
But-
out, which does not actually drive need
the
or
human element.
technology
Yeah.
or efficiency.
So even if everyone was acting in a benevolent, sorry.
That's the human element that I'm talking about. As long
No,
as
no,
humans
what-
have that, it won't work.
No, I'm saying even if you are trying, even if everyone is benevolent in a system, even if everyone is like, I want to help everybody else out, you're still not going to have that, that's going to be a much easier and better way to help other people out. That's not going to occur because that's the reason people discover better ways of doing things is because they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. But if your entire motivation is I'm helping other people, you're gonna continue.
I still say you're looking at it wrong. It's not, your motivation isn't helping other people. Your motivation is getting done what you need to do to get what you need to get to survive.
Okay,
And
but
people will still always look for the easiest way to get done what they need to get done so that they can survive.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Why would you want to work harder just to get the exact same result?
And if somebody's job, their contribution to society is picking cotton,
okay,
okay, they're going to eventually create the cotton gin or farm equipment to make life easier for themselves. And then
Not
the
if
rest
they
of
have a
society will
quota
see
and
that.
they can meet it fairly easily. If they have a quota and they can meet it and they're fine with it, they have no reason. That was invented because there was a lot of plantations that were forcefully, with slavery here in the U.S. and even plantations that had hired help, they treated everybody poorly, and it was very hard and arduous work. So they came up with that to assist others because it was such an issue for everybody. But if
Yeah.
everybody can meet their quota, then it's not that big of a deal.
yeah, and so so here's the other thing with the problem with communism is it's possible to do a task that doesn't actually benefit people, but people think it has benefit. So, and this is something that Friedrich Hayek touched on, and actually Maynard Keynes advocated for in his book. And this is something Friedrich was pointing out, like this is an inherent flaw. So, This is something that could exist under a communist system, and it actually, nothing would be there to discourage it. So, my job could be to go and dig a hole. And hey, I've dug 10 holes today, and I've done my job for society. I go back, I get my reward, I get my food and all that sort of thing. Somebody else's job can be to come along and fill in holes. And he fills in those 10 holes. And so every day I go out and dig holes, 10 holes, and every day the other guy, or every night the other guy goes in and fills in 10 holes. We're doing what we're supposed to do, and we're helping society, and we're providing for other people, but nothing is getting done. That happens a lot under communism, where people are doing something that doesn't produce a result, but they are still getting rewarded for it. And there's, under a communist system,
that task needs to be shot.
Well, it happened a lot under communism, where somebody was doing something because it's the way it's always been done, or because it's what they were told to do. And actually, this is the same kind of mentality, because John Maynard Keynes actually suggested that people dig holes into mines and in the ground, and bury treasury bonds, and then someone else would come along and pay for the opportunity to go dig up that treasury bond. And so the person who would be paid to dig and bury, and then the person would pay the person to dig and bury, so they would basically pay their salary, and then they would go and collect that treasury bond, and then they would earn more than they paid, and this would stimulate the economy. This is a fundamentally flawed system, because nothing is being produced. Nothing of benefit.
That's not really communism. That's more.
That's
more capitalism, where hey, go bury this, and then somebody else will pay more than what it's worth for the opportunity to maybe find it.
Yes. So it is.
That's very capitalistic.
It's capitalistic in that he's trying to provide an incentive for an incentiveless system, because he was trying to make communism work. Essentially, he was trying to say, oh, if we just give somebody a monetary incentive, then communism will be fixed. The problem that he didn't consider is that the communistic system is fundamentally flawed in that you're doing something without producing anything, because production is the only source of value, and that's what Maynard. That's the area that Keynes failed to understand. He was thinking, as long as the system is moving, then the economy is working, and we're a success. Hey, all you need is the system to be moving.
Yeah, that kind of system also does not work with uncontrolled population growth, I guess.
Communism would also be extremely subject to population growth, because it could be, hey, our society is maintained at current. Oh crap! Somebody just had a kid. Now we've got to figure out a way to support the new kid. Okay, so that's enough about communism. I know every stream kind of devolves into an argument about communism. So I am in agreement with you on the Federal Republic, because that was kind of the similar system to what I was going to do. So I was going to say,
I do have one major flaw with a republic.
Okay.
It's because a republic cannot see the future. So whatever laws they write, they are not going to know what's going to happen 100, 200 years from now. So we have a Second Amendment that says we can bear arms. They had no idea about bazookas, tanks, rocket launchers, brass knuckles, all the extra crap that people are whining because some of it they think they should have at home and others they don't. And now we have this dispute on automatic versus semi-automatic and what that means, and half the public doesn't even know what a semi-automatic is. They're like, just ban it all. It has the word automatic in it. And they don't realize that pistols are semi-automatic.
Well, they also think assault rifle is a type of weapon.
But I'm saying, as the republic part of our government, which would be our constitution, that's the republic part, is our constitution. This is everything written in the law, and this is here. This is how it's set. This is what everyone's rights are, and now we're having disputes on what does this even mean, because technology has advanced us to a point that the original writers of the Constitution, all they had was muskets. They're like, well, that's an arm. You can have a gun or a sword. That's your two options.
They had muskets, they had pistols, they had machine guns, they had cannons.
No. Machine guns were...
Not machine gun. They had rapid fire weapons,
like
though.
Gatling gun, but that was limited to the military, and that was I don't even know if that was out when they came up with that Second Amendment.
No, it was Thomas Jefferson. Oh, I'm getting some echo. Can somebody mute themselves? Yeah, hello? Okay, the echo's gone. All right, so Thomas Jefferson actually wrote a letter regarding this because someone was asking if they could get one of those rapid-fire guns on their boat and if that would be permissible, and this was a private industry. And he said, yes, exactly, because if you don't, the people attacking your ship will. That's the entire purpose. Is it exists. You should have it because other people who want to do you harm will have it. So,
like I said, I wouldn't say you should be able to have any firearm or weapon capacity that the military has, but
I
you
would.
should be able to have any firearm or weapon capacity that your police force has. So if your police force has fully automatic weapons, you should be able to have fully automatic weapons.
No, I think you should have because otherwise the military could. I mean, you're talking about the police would be essentially closer to like a local city or community. And like, okay, yes, you can deal with the police, and if they wanted to take over your town and enforce a dictatorship, you could fight against them. If the National Guard would be a state military, right? If they had like tanks and APCs and they wanted to completely dominate and like have a dictatorship over your state, then you couldn't stop them if all you had was pistols and machine guns.
I also support mandatory military service, in which case, your civilians that are your veterans, your local people that are no longer in the military could fight against that because they have the training.
The training is not enough when you're talking about jets, bombers, drones. Yeah, drones. Hey, you can have thousands of people taken out by one drone, and that drone, oh, we took out a drone, and like, okay, there's going to be 1,000 more.
I can't take out a drone because it can shoot me from like 12 miles away. But
I mean, you could disable, like EMP or whatever, disable a drone, but you haven't stopped the military-industrial complex, so there's got to be a way that you can give them a run for their money.
I think we're kind of getting
we're getting
topic here, but that was one point. Second point is we had prohibition for a while, which was an amendment, and they repealed that amendment, even though that was part of our constitutional amendments. But that's because they didn't know how the alcohol industry would be affected by that. They didn't realize it would be a rise to mafia and gangs. So you can write as many laws as you want, but you're never going to foresee every possible outcome of certain events or how society will grow past that. So then you're either constantly going to have amendments, at which point who decides what those amendments are later and what can be revoked because it's no longer applicable to modern society, which is what people are trying to do now with certain parts of the amendment or amendments. So that's the major downside I would see with just the strict republic with the written law is it's going to have to adapt. How does it do that? Because there's no way you can see all this up front.
Well,
you can't see 200 years in the future where society is going to be.
Yeah, I didn't advocate for a strict republic. I said a constitutional federal republic.
But then who decides, who changes those laws when they're no longer necessary or when new laws are necessary?
Okay, so
into powers, which is why.
And that's a democratic republic. That's not a strict republic.
Even a strict republic has elected officials. Like the
all right.
United States government is not a democratic republic.
Okay.
It's a constitutional federal republic.
I think legally it's acting more as a democratic republic.
Yeah.
Definitely within the last 50 years.
Okay. So I want to interject what I plan on talking about because it kind of piggybacks off of what BTK was talking about. So I was thinking, okay, if I wanted a minarchist government, I would essentially go back to the Constitution of the United States. So again, I'm in favor of saying a federal republic, right, with democratically elected officials, because that's what we had. And so I would leave most of the Constitution intact, but I think I would add a few caveats on top of that in order to try to maintain that republic for a little longer than it actually has seemed to last. So the first part of the changes to that is I don't have the specifics on this, but this is just a general principle. There needs to be a distinction between children and adults, because the main distinction between children and adults is your dependence on another person. So in order to be an adult, they would have every person would have to prove that they could support themselves independently for 1 year. Then they would be recognized as society by an adult, and there would have to be a specific ID. So this is like if we try to USA 2.0 and we went back to the Constitution, we're like, okay, and we're going to add IDs to this because this is something that they didn't have. They didn't have like, state IDs or federal. So this would be a federal ID saying you are now recognized as an adult in our society. And what that means is that nobody else is responsible for your actions or behaviors. You're free to consent to contracts, and this would mean sexual encounters as well. And no one is responsible for your well-being except for yourself, because you've proven that you can support yourself independently for 1 year. So this is what you would need. Anybody who isn't able to meet those would be a dependent, and they would either be a dependent on their parents or guardian or whichever individual claims them as a dependent. All right.
Okay,
so,
sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that's the adult. So, second part of this is a citizenship test. So in order to take the citizenship test, you have to be recognized as an adult, and then there would be a series of criteria to be a citizen, and the only reason to be a citizen would be to vote and to hold office. You can't do either of those if you're not a citizen. And in order to be a citizen, you would have to recognize, you would have to show a complete understanding of the Constitution itself, why all of these regulations are in place, why this law is there. You would have to prove that okay, this is the reason that these rules are in place. I can explain why they're there. I can talk about, okay, if we repealed this, these are the negative effects that could happen if we leave it, so after you understand exactly why the system currently is the way it is, and you get the ability to vote, well then you're more likely to vote in something that is aligned with that original document, which I think this is part of the reason why the U.S. deteriorated so quickly, is because we allowed people to vote who had no comprehension of the system or why these rules are there. They're like, oh, that's arbitrary, get rid of it. There's no reason for that, get rid of it. Why do we have this in place? That's not important.
So basically, like the naturalization test, you have to be able to demonstrate. Yeah. Oh God, I got wind coming in.
Oh.
You have to be able to demonstrate a knowledge of the Constitution.
Yes. Yeah. Right now, the natural-born people don't have to do anything like that, and often it is people coming from other countries desperate to live in the United States who are more American than people who are born and raised here, because they're like, okay, I know exactly what your system of government does and why it's so amazing, and they can actually often explain the Constitution better than people who are like, oh, I just live here. Oh, dude, the government sucks. Let's get rid of that thing. And it's like, dude, you don't understand the reason behind that particular rule. So that's why the citizenship test, I think, would be important to hold office and to vote, which is something that they kind of talked about instituting in the original document of the Constitution, and they were talking about a way to best set this system up. I think now that we've got technology and computers, we can make a more refined system for that's easy to implement and easy to get everybody's citizenship, and it's not overburdensome in order to implement. I was about to say, okay, now I've got 2 more points here. So the laws would be all right. So the laws in the Constitution are actually based on natural rights, right? This is if you go back and read the Declaration of Independence, this is a key point in the Enlightenment that led to the drafting of the Constitution. So, but I do want to specify that natural rights are granted to adults only in this society. Children will have a limited amount of natural rights, because this is some area that is actually pointed out to me. I don't know if you guys know who Atomic ANCAP is. He's like a 12-year-old kid who's talking about anarcho-capitalism, but this is something he pointed out. I'm like, oh, I didn't actually think about this. Is children don't have rights, like natural right. Like, so if you're talking about the liberty and the pursuit of happiness, well, those aren't actually things that we grant to children. Because otherwise children would be, binging on candy and staying up all hours of the night. So they have to have some kind of, parents need to be allowed to provide some kind of restriction upon children until they can prove themselves to be independent. So that's why there needs to be caveats in saying, okay, if you are dependent on someone else, they get to dictate some of your rights. They can't revoke your right to life. That's so you still have full right to life, and you know they can't abuse you and things along those lines. This is somewhat similar to the way society currently is, but it seems like society right now takes this a little to the extreme, where children can't do anything wrong, and you can't. Oh, how dare you tell that child that they can't dress up in drag and that they aren't a woman? And it's like, parents need to be able to set some kind of standards and rules and be like, okay, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do, but you got to wait till you're an adult and then you can do it all on your own. That should be the way that a society is kind of geared more towards, is like, yes, sure, I'll support you in that, but you got to prove that you're an adult in society, and then you can go off and dress and do whatever, or you can get your sex changed and all that sort of thing. But as long as you are of a child's...
You have the mental capacity
yes.
to make that decision responsibly.
Yeah, so that's why if you have a child status, your rights are limited in a society, whereas it seems like in the USA today, children are like, oh, but they're just the same as adults. They should be able to make all of their decisions. You're like, and this is, I don't know if you were listening, I watched the Joe Rogan stream where he's talking to Owen Benjamin, and Owen Benjamin is talking about somebody who's trying to get their 3-year-old on hormone blockers. 3.
Oh, it's a 3-year-old biological daughter?
No, I think it's a 3-year-old male that wants to be a female, and it's like 3 years old. Do you think that...
That's
okay,
very hazardous to their health, because their body's not even producing certain hormones yet.
But
they're already trying to block stuff in their body.
And right now, society can't do anything to stop that.
As at least one of the people in this conversation knows, I'm a tranny.
Okay. Yeah.
I would say that as soon as you are able to have cognitive realization that you exist as a person, not that you exist, because a baby at like 6 months, I believe, is when they realize that they exist. Obviously, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you have the cognitive. If you walk, I make this argument with TERFs all the time. Okay, if you walk into, and I make it with the trans cult all the time too. If you walk into Walmart, and you walk up to a little boy or a little girl, all right, and you say, "Are you a boy or are you a girl?" They can tell you.
Mm-hmm.
They know, not because they've been told, because it's not a social construct. Neither gender nor sex are social constructs. I fucking hate the people that say that it is, because it's not.
Yeah.
They know fundamentally, internally, they know who and or what they are. They know they're a human. They know that they're a boy. They know that they're a girl. If you walk up to what you perceive to be a little girl, you know, a biological girl, and go, "Are you a boy or are you a girl?" and she says, "I'm a boy," cool. I don't care. You still have no right to take that child and put it on any kind of medication for gender confirmation, anything. That's retarded.
Yeah.
You shouldn't. Okay. You shouldn't. I'm gonna stop
because
this isn't a stream about transgender.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but it's part of the reasoning behind the stuff that I say, because right now, if a parent chooses to put their child on hormone blockers, society can't do anything. However,
that's fundamentally wrong.
Yeah.
They should not be able to
Yeah.
To do that. Society should be able to say, "No, you're stupid."
Okay.
That's
So
child abuse and child endangerment.
yeah. So that's why children have restricted rights in that they have to obey. Like, the parents can set certain rules upon them, but I also think that gives them more protection in areas like this. Like, society as a whole has to be able to say, okay, no, that right there, this parent is doing something that is over the line, because we've given the parent this the position of authority and power over their children, their dependents. But it's in my perspective, putting their child on hormone blockers and all that sort of thing would be abusing that power. So this is why society would have to be like, okay, parents have these controls over their children, but the child, like a decision like that would affect the child physically, has to be made by that child once they are accepted as an adult. So if they want to have that by the age of 8, they have to be able to prove that they can support themselves independently, and so that's not likely to happen.
That's a little far.
Well,
I think that's a little far. Even if they can support themselves at 8, I mean.
I think it still needs to be a bit post-puberty because hormones are constantly changing, and I know in males they're primarily testosterone, but estrogen starts to develop, or their bodies would keep growing.
Yeah, I get this, but
So
at
it
that
has to have
point,
that. So if their hormones are thrown off, they may have growth deficiencies in some areas, or some unknown.
But that's why I made the caveat.
Osteoporosis at the age of 30.
Yeah.
We don't know.
But that's why I made the caveat.
Here in a few weeks. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why I made the caveat that once you are an adult, you are responsible for your own decisions, and nobody is responsible for your well-being. So if you can get to the point, so if you are a person who was born a man and you want to be a woman, and you're like, okay, these are the rules of society, I have to be acknowledged as an adult in order to go through with this. Well, if you want to do that prior to puberty, you better work towards that to become accepted as an adult before puberty, and then you can put yourself on hormone blockers. Yes, that's going to have devastating effects.
So then you wouldn't.
Would there be an age limit to this?
I was going to say, so you wouldn't support a baseline age limit?
No, there should be no age limit for when somebody is recognized as an adult, provided they can prove themselves.
Like that odd prodigy kid who's trying to go to college when he's 12, he could be an adult when he's 11.
Yes, but it takes an extremely exceptional individual to be able to provide and support themselves independently, right?
That I'm still unsure of, because child labor back during the Industrial Revolution, there's a lot of kids out making money, doing what they could, trying to help provide for their family. There was kids that could live out on the street, and yeah, it was kind of the slums, but they could take care of themselves. But they're still kids. Doesn't necessarily mean that they should be voting for who's running the government.
No, but at that point,
to make proper decisions.
Yeah, okay, but at that point, they have separated themselves as an individual. They have said, I can support myself, I can make my own decisions, I am the only one responsible for me. Once they have identified themselves as that, and society recognizes that, they should be able to make whatever decisions they want. They should be able to go and string out on coke for the rest of their life if they want to. I don't know why they would, but if they want to...
So right now, I think the age of driving is still 16. You don't even need to be an adult for that.
Yeah.
But if you're already an adult, do we still have regulations on things like that? Because I sure as hell don't want 10-year-olds driving around on the highway. So there are certain things that you still have to be older and larger physically. I just say for driving, you still have to prove yourself competent, right? You still have to pass the test, and you still have to drive an actual car. Now, most people who are 10 years old aren't physically able to drive a car because they're too small. So you still have to prove that you can drive a vehicle. I didn't get my license until I was 18. I could drive prior to that, but I had to prove that I could drive, and I passed the driving test. So I had to pass the written. So that's on some points you've made here, I guess once you're done explaining your fourth point,
so
kind of could be on that. But I'm thinking there should be at least a base age limit, to where it's just we don't care what you're doing. 16 is the earliest you become an adult, quote unquote, something like that. So the point I was making is right now the parents are making decisions for their children, and the children can't make those decisions for themselves. That's what I see as harmful, right? They're like, oh yes, you can definitely do this. Let's get you on hormone, but the child hasn't proven that they are independent. They are self-sufficient. Like a stupid parent who hasn't done their research. If they're personally, I just don't think kids should be on them. I personally think that it should be illegal to give somebody hormones until they're like 8. Well, I don't think 18 should be the rule, because if this person has demonstrated, okay, they are on their own, they're doing this of their own volition, no one is forcing them, they are not bowing down to their parents' whim, this is their own personal decision, no one should be able to stop that. Because imagine if this was any other thing besides being trans, and you're like, okay, I want to do my own thing, I want to be my own person, and you're like, oh, but you can't do that. What?
Why not? I've proven that I'm proven that I can function in society, that I can be just the same as any other person who's recognized as an adult. Why can't I go out and start my own business? And like, oh, but because you're too young. That's
So maybe just to clarify some of it, because I get what you're saying. If they're competent enough to pass whatever the criteria is to be
yes,
considered an adult at this point, they should be well enough aware that they need to do their research and find out before they just put themselves in hormones, or before they just start taking drugs, before they hop behind a massive SUV and can't see over the steering wheel. They should be smart enough to do their research and find out, should I do this? So I get your point there.
Yeah.
Do you have a basis criteria for determining if someone has reached that competent age?
No, that's the part that I would need to refine. I don't have. I don't know what that line would be. That's one of the fundamental flaws in this system. Is I don't know. Like I've said, be independent for a year, but that's
man.
What does that exactly
I would
mean?
Say it's even scary at 18 now.
Yeah. Well, that's
high schoolers that are oblivious to how to take care of themselves.
So there's one other point I wanted to point out. So the punishment system that I would do is no prisons. So I want to get rid of all prisons. Now you still have local jails and things like that, but no prison system whatsoever. And this basically, if you commit a horrible crime, let's say killing, rapes, irreparable harm to another person, that sort of thing. Yeah, well then death sentence. That's if you're found guilty of this, death sentence. That's just kind of.
Or
I agree.
We could do kind of like what is that, rule of Hammurabi?
Yeah, well.
Rape somebody, your week gets chopped off.
No, I mean I say just go straight to the death penalty. Yeah, but
so they could still say, hey, we don't support the death penalty here, and that'll appease a lot of people. But if you've been caught stealing 2 or 3 times, you can chop a hand off.
Yeah, no, okay, so. Yeah, so that this is so the thing is, okay, so the extreme crimes like killing someone and murdering, yeah, but the other things, okay, so this would include manslaughter, this would include grand theft, this would include grand theft auto, grand larceny, embezzlement, things along anything that's lesser than rape, but even down to as small as petty crime.
Any non-violent crime is what you're trying.
Well, no, because even manslaughter would kind of be violent in its nature, and assault would be violent as well, but assault isn't like to the point where like, okay, you hit somebody, now it's time to get your time to see the hangman or whatever. But I would set up a 3 strikes you're out system. So I'm not talking about maiming people or dismembering and all that sort of thing, because some people might consider that cruel and unusual. I'm just saying, okay, whatever, 3 strikes, you're out of the country. But there's a difference here is that
where do we put them? Who would want them?
Anywhere but here. We don't care. Just get out of here. That's.
How would they get there? They can't exactly. Like, if they're in the U.S., they can't go to Canada. They're not going to want them there. And if they go to Mexico, they still have immigration laws, which they're probably enforcing more than we do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they would have time to get that sorted out, because in order to, so after you've committed a crime, so
going there so they can come here.
Yeah, but okay, so if you've been found guilty of one of the lesser crimes, you still have to compensate the victim. So if you ended up, stealing $1,000 worth of stuff, you have to pay them the $1,000 back plus interest. I don't know what that exact interest amount would be. I think that could be voted on and all that sort of thing. Also, think that what it takes to be considered an adult and an independent individual could be voted on by a society of people who've proven themselves to be competent voting. And
what if
so let's see, make sure I'm looking over my stuff. So I think that was everything. So that's the punishment, the respecting of natural rights, children versus adults, and so I think that those things in place would create a better overall society, because then you've only got you have to prove yourself to be accepted as an adult. You have to prove yourself to be accepted as somebody who can vote and can run the country. And punishment isn't just the you did something wrong, time to go to jail, and you're just like, but that to me doesn't fix anything. In order to actually be punished for something, you have to make compensation for the people who got wronged. Otherwise, it's kind of like 2 wrongs don't make a right? Like,
I was gonna say, on the compensation part, what if they have to almost like community service, but they would have to get a second job of which 90% of their pay or 95% of the pay goes back towards compensation. They only keep 5%.
Yeah. So the details of that could be worked out, but the person who had their stuff stolen or who had their car destroyed or who had their business set on fire, there has to be some way that they can get their business back and then recoup some of the time. Like, hey, I don't want just my business back because then I've lost the time that it took to get the business back. I want the business back plus some of the money I would have made had the business not been destroyed. So it's that sort of thing.
Something like that. Because right now, you commit a crime, you steal someone's car, it gets blown up or shot to crap. They go to jail, you get nothing.
Yeah. So
you're out.
Yeah. And so if you do something like along those lines 3 times and you're out of the country, well then all of your stuff gets sold off. So everything that you've ever owned gets sold off in order to compensate people, and then you're kicked out and you get to keep whatever money you have, and if that's not enough to get you anywhere, then sorry, it's not our fault. Okay.
Would you be opposed to not necessarily slavery, but instead of community service, government-run farms or production facilities?
Well, actually
do not get paid.
That's actually in the Constitution right now, and this is something I've seen people tweet at me that slavery still exists in the United States. Amendment 13. Yeah.
Yeah, 13.
Because
exists in the United States. Yeah.
So-
We go outside now.
so-
You'll see black people out there running the machines.
So slavery is outlawed in the United States, except when it's someone who is in the judicial system, someone who's in the prison system. They can be forced to work without pay.
Right.
See, that I think would be good compensation.
The only reason that clause exists is because otherwise the government, states or federal,
Mm-hmm.
would not legally be able to sentence anybody to life in prison. You'd be taking away their right to the body, their habeas corpus, for the rest of their life. And you can't do that because slavery is illegal. That's why that exception is in the 13th Amendment.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the government cannot give
Okay.
you a life sentence.
All right. And so I think I went on quite a bit on mine, and I do want to give Sinister a chance to state his position because it's actually a really fun one. But I do want to poke holes in my own. So this was an example of a minarchist government that's built on a republic, and I think that these things would help keep that republic in place for longer than the United States has been able to sustain itself. But there are problems. First, like you mentioned, the adult test. Well, somebody has to run that test, and as long as you've got somebody making the decisions of who is and isn't an adult, that's a form of power. And that's a place where you can get corrupted and be like, oh, well, if you want to be an adult, this is what you got to do. And then it leads to...
An adult would give me $50 right now.
Yeah, well, the other thing is, well, if I let you be an adult and then you become a citizen, well, then you have to vote this way. Otherwise, oh, you're not going to vote this way? All right, no adult status for you.
So
I wanted
to ask you this on those 2 points. So you had 2 different points. One being a citizen,
Mm-hmm.
and 2 being an adult.
Yeah.
What if those were somewhat combined, but we had a third state of? I don't know.
Well, I don't think you should be able to.
So you've got pre-citizen, like children. They're
Mhm.
born into the country.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not just going to kick them out. Their parents are here. Their families are here. They belong here. They deserve a chance to grow up and to become a citizen.
Okay.
Is there an in-between state? So if they grow up, become an adult, but have not yet become a citizen, what would that be called?
Wait,
Is
no,
there a term
that's
limit on
just
that,
an
and
adult.
what would repercussions of that being?
No, that's just being an adult.
Or,
Because you can be an
so
adult.
as soon as you become an adult, you're a citizen.
No. The citizen is the right to vote and to dictate how the country is done. Is
Correct. So there's
changed.
separate things.
Yes. Why would you combine the two?
So
So it sounds like you want to combine the two and then add a stage in between. And I'm like, well, that stage already exists.
What's the difference?
Okay.
I think what he's saying is there's going to be adults that are citizens, and there's going to be adults that are adults. So basically,
Yeah.
it's a 2-class system. You have the ones that have earned the right to participate in society.
So then the
ones that are
adults
just
that are not
in
citizens,
society.
what can they do and what can they not do? What is
Okay.
the benefit of becoming a citizen other than you can vote? Because How many people did not vote in the last
No,
this
that's
last election, the election before?
so there is
It's
so
not really a driver.
becoming a citizen is just the right to vote and the right to hold office.
What about the
That's
right
it.
to own land?
No, that's you can be an adult and own private property. So
Now, land, not private property. Difference. Private property.
private
I would
property
consider
includes
an
land.
apartment, Your, if you live somewhere, your domicile, your clothes, your money, your equipment, your car.
But-
That's all private property. Land. I mean, can you go buy a
Pri-
piece of land and build a house on it and stuff?
yeah,
That would
that's
almost exclude you being a citizen.
private property
Which, by the
includes
time you
land.
become an
Private
adult, you should also be smart enough to become a citizen as well.
Yeah, private property is the ability to own anything. It doesn't matter if it's land or if it's an animal or if it's a house or
I get that,
yeah.
but if half of your country owns half your land and they never bother to become a citizen, who are you ruling? What is the government for, and what are they doing? Just like now. What does it fix about now? Because there's a ton of American citizens that don't vote, that aren't interested in government, that don't really care. They want the free stuff, but they can go out and buy a house anywhere. They can go buy a farm if they wanted to.
Okay, so you
They
think
live their life and say "F you, government."
okay, so that might be a so in order the privilege of being a citizen or the
Correct, and it's
it
not
is
a
the
privileged
ability
state,
to
It's something available to everybody, so
Yeah.
it's not like privileged class.
yeah
All you got to do is just grow
Okay,
up,
yeah.
act like an adult, and show that you
Okay.
understand how your
So
government works.
so it's kind of the opposite of what the founding fathers were saying. They're saying in order to vote you must be a landowner. I think that's actually a good revision. Is the benefit of being a citizen is you can vote, you can hold office, and also you can own land because that would be restricted to only
There should be
citizens.
incentives to want people to become actual citizens, which would force them to learn how the government works and why it was set up, so we don't run up with a general populace that doesn't even know how many states we have.
Yeah. Well,
I also have-
like was it Obama was
53 states, right? Was Puerto Rico the last state?
Obama was talking about visiting all 52 states, and like as he was president, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
I have a potential fix to your 3 strikes you're out.
Okay.
Boredom, thing. What if we took a section of the country, a part of California or a part of Texas or a part of butt nowhere? All right, you have your 3 strikes. Okay, you're moved there.
Okay, so
That
yeah,
area
like
is
a designated holding area, right? Like a escape from LA.
And if you, once you're there, I don't have like review panel. I was in the military, so I have like review boards. They see if you've functioned there, you've stayed out of trouble, basically they determine every, 3-5 years whether or not you are fit, competent, etc. to return to society. And if you never pass that test, if you keep getting in trouble, then you can never go back into the rest of the country. But if you reform and you don't steal shit anymore and you hold down a job and you do everything that you should do in a normal society, they see that and they give you the chance to return.
I mean, I'm
like a parole period for like 2 years.
yeah.
Like okay, so you go there, you have 3 years with 0 strikes. You've been a model citizen. They give you, hey, you can re-enter society, on a parole period of 2 years, and if you don't do anything in regular society, welcome back.
Well, I don't
The only way
think
that would really work though is if you already had land, they'd have to basically hold that land for a minimum of 5 years, 3 years while you're in there, 2 years for your probation, and then you can just step back into your life.
yeah. So I'm not opposed to setting aside an area to put the criminals who have shown that they can't get along with society, but I am opposed to letting people like that back in, even if they've shown that they can. But I'm a good person, and all that sort of thing, because there's no way of knowing if that's just the way they're acting when they're inside, and they won't revert back to their old habits once they're out. And this is a situation we see with criminals all the time who are in the prison system, And yeah, sure, they're the model inmate when they're in prison, and then they come out and they get on parole, and then they go back to their life of crime, and they continue being a plague upon society, sort of thing.
Well, I mean,
That's-
you take it a step further. You
I mean-
go into this area. You're there for your after 3 years. If you've been good, you get to go back
But
to society
that-
for a 2-year probation. If you fuck up, you get the death penalty.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's too much leniency. It's like, hey, just 3 strikes, you already had your chance. Just GTFO, we don't care what happens to you, just anywhere but here. That's because it'll build up the situation. It's like, oh, I've got 2 strikes, I better be on my best behavior. Otherwise,
I'd send them there after their 2nd strike.
but
And then
So,
if
okay.
they come back
One
out,
thing to consider would be cost, because right now the prison system is costing
Yes.
us billions of dollars per year. So even to maintain a section of land like that, to make sure they've got food or pay the people who are monitoring them, you know,
it'd
to
be
watch
like-
them and
We need to do
document
the
whatever.
Chinese solution.
That's all going to cost. I'm thinking, what if the government just built a little boat, gives them about a week of food, push off the ocean, goodbye.
see, I wouldn't
Good
be
luck.
like a state-run.
A bullet would be a lot
Well,
cheaper.
no, if you think about it, that's kind of how Australia started.
It wouldn't be like a
Oh, that's
state-run
exactly what
state.
Australia was.
Psychology.
That's how they started. They sent all their prisoners over there and were like, goodbye.
Yeah.
And now
What
it's
I'm
a
advocating for
continent
is
with
that-
some major cities.
Hey guys, I think I know why they sent them there, because they're hoping that the wildlife there would probably kill them, because
Yeah,
you go to
they're-
Australia, everything there is trying to kill you.
Yeah, it's like that.
Everything.
Not our problem anymore.
What I'm advocating for wasn't a welfare state for the bad people. What I was advocating for, or arguing for, was a section.
Oh, my parents are
basically-
home. They brought me dinner. I'll see you
Okay.
guys later.
Yeah, thanks for joining
See ya.
us.
Sorry, I kept jumping in and out. I
No, that's-
I was working on a script
That's
for a
fine.
video I'm doing about pit. Hey, you guys, just diverge from the topic real fast. What is your opinion on the pit bull? Like, is it do you
I would
believe it's
never
a more
own one.
dangerous dog?
No.
Or?
Oh.
No,
I think they're
bulls
cool
are
looking
not
dogs,
more
but
dangerous.
I don't really like animals, period.
I think they are bred to be attack dogs. I think that it's their
Well, yeah, same thing as Rottweilers, German Shepherds.
Yeah.
They're all said to be dangerous dogs, but most of
Ironically,
them are
the
bred
thing
to be
you
that
just
way,
noted-
raised to
Yeah.
be that way.
well,
Yeah.
no, even
Those are the 3 most dangerous dogs.
Nurture, not nature.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree on that.
That's an old
Mhm.
debate that's outdated.
well,
It's too genetic.
compare the Rottweiler and the pit bull to a Chihuahua or a teacup poodle or a terrier. I think, like even a Mastiff, right? A Mastiff. I don't think it's entirely environmental, or I don't think it's entire nurture. So you can have like a very gentle pit bull and like and some of these bigger dogs. But I think pit bulls, they're just instinctively, because they've got that lockjaw, right? They bite onto something and they won't let go till it's dead.
Well, they
That-
don't have
that
a
is-
locked jaw. They just got really strong jaws.
Chihuahuas, and I'm glad you picked those two. Both Chihuahuas.
Oh,
and
yeah,
poodles are
they're vicious.
fucking dogs.
They're
Vicious.
Of course they are, but
I
you
don't
can
But-
like Chihuahuas.
But even the most vicious Chihuahua is not gonna not gonna kill somebody. I don't care. It's gonna take, like, if you get killed by a Chihuahua, people will just point and laugh at you. There's no sympathy for you.
They're like,
Not
well,
just
good
that
for
they
them.
deserve to die.
They're like, yeah, you had a Darwin Award in your future, no matter what. But-
Alright.
I think pit
I
bulls are
gotta go, you
fine,
guys.
just don't
I'll
bring
see you
them around
later.
small children.
Bye.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Just in
yeah.
case.
So I mean, there's big dogs that can be vicious. Like I really want a Shiba Inu or a Husky or maybe a Malamute or something like that. But those, yeah, the Shibas are awesome. But those dogs have been shown to be very loyal, and he attack, but he also defend.
I did have a question on your.
Just a little non PC there, but
your
Or is it he defend but he attack?
no set
I
age.
did have.
Hmm?
Yeah, I did have a question on your no set age for becoming a adult. I guess.
Yeah,
I
'cause-
say somebody's a prodigy. You know.
Yeah.
they're 10. They do everything that they need to do. They pass all the tests. They're self-sufficient. What's to stop another older group from targeting them for sexual exploitation? Are you going to
That's
have
true.
laws that limit that? Because they're
Wait, I'm confused about the sexual exploitation, because
Like child pornography. Right now,
no.
if you're under the age of 18, off
Yeah,
limits.
I get you. So
If
if
they're a 12-year-old adult, can they consent to that kind of stuff?
yeah, I said that they could freely enter contracts, and that's exactly so. From what I'm seeing, if somebody has proven themselves to be considered an adult by the age of 10, even if their body is still prepubescent, we're gonna treat like, hey, if they want to go off and do their own thing, have at it. Whatever, you can enter contracts freely. So it's
porn star.
then
mean,
I don't
know I'm
see.
taking it to an extreme.
As long as that person is able to consent on their own, which if they are recognized as an adult, it's saying that they can consent, they're old enough, they're responsible enough. If they want to then participate in what you would call child porn, in this society it wouldn't be child porn because they're an adult. It would be adult porn. Same ways like
Question for you.
Yes, I. Okay,
When
no,
you
that's
say consent, what exactly is it? Consent because they can say yes, and if they are not knowledgeable enough in a subject, is it then their fault, even being at a younger age, because they have not yet experienced that?
they're responsible for themselves.
Or is that
That is the double-edged sword of being an independent adult. Not only do you have the freedom, but you have the responsibility. So if you choose to go down that path, no one else should be responsible for you at that point.
I could see that being a world of.
Yeah,
So,
that'd go
if
bad.
you're a
Because they
parent
can give
and you've got a
4-year-old
14-year-old that's now an adult, and they decide, hey, I'm just going to go sleep around because I'm an adult, and they can sleep with whoever. They can go sleep with a 22-year-old college kid.
They can do that right
and they
now.
wind up pregnant. Yes.
What's stopping them from doing that right now?
Because it's illegal.
It's not
And
illegal.
the 22-year-old can go to jail for statutory rape if they're sleeping with a 14-year-old. That's a huge deterrent.
Okay. Apparently not, because it still happens.
22-year-olds and 17-year-olds, like that little gap there where they're instantly an adult, statutory rape cases come from.
But there are still instances
that
of
doesn't
14-year-olds.
Yes,
Wait, let's see. What
Yes,
was it?
there is.
Rob Lowe, right? That's the infamous Rob Lowe case where it was two 15-year-olds who said that they were 18 and that he was in a three-way with them, and they found out later that they were underage. Like it's technically statutory rape. No, this was like 90s. This was 90s, dude. This was like
man, people still think he's a hot guy, but he's looking old.
No, this is when he was. This is when he was like top of his game, when he was like 20 something, like 21, 22. So, but this was a huge scandal. But he couldn't be held liable for it because they told him they were 18.
My point is,
but that still happens now.
Doing that, are they old enough to understand what they're doing?
I say yes. If they can demonstrate, because that's what the test is. It's like, hey, you can demonstrate that you should be held responsible for your own actions. And this is an area I've had multiple streams about this, where I've talked about this. Right now, 14-year-olds can be tried as an adult in a murder case. And yet, for some reason, 14-year-olds having sex with someone who's 21, oh, that's a child. That's it. And you're like, if they had murdered someone, you'd be like, oh no, give them the death sentence. But for some reason, they're like, okay, they can be held responsible for murdering someone, but they can't be held responsible for their sexual acts? That, to me, doesn't make any sense. It's like, in one instance where they did something horrible, they're an adult. But in another instance where they did something less horrible, they're not an adult. And, we can't be held responsible for what they did. And you're like, if they had killed somebody at the same age, with the same mental capacity, the odds are a judge may find them guilty as an adult. It happens all the time. So, right, it used to be like, oh, he's being tried at 17, being tried as an adult. 16 being tried as an adult. Okay, that's a little. 15, all right, that's a little. But now it's like 14, and people are like, yeah, kind of makes sense.
So then, along with your testing, so when this country was first started, it was not uncommon for 13 and 14-year-old girls, especially, to kind of be married off to another
Yeah.
family and already
So-
starting their family. Also because life expectancy was a bit
Yeah.
lower, so people were
Actually-
expected to start their family sooner.
Yeah.
It was required by the government.
Yeah.
Well, state governments anyway.
Mm-hmm.
In Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, when it
All right.
first became a state, it was a legal requirement for the parents. They have their daughters married at 14 and their sons married at 16. Otherwise, they paid penalties to the state.
Okay, so
Okay.
that
So
would make sense for back then, but in modern society, I don't think most 14-year-olds are going to be capable of handling a full-time job, getting a house, earning citizenship, knowing who to vote for, because
well,
kids are just not learning the basics of
I would say
the basics of just general life management, even
I
after
would
high
argue
school.
that that's
Okay,
too much
so-
of too much of a generalization.
so. My question is: have you
So
talked to
you-
anybody who is 21 or 22 right now? I would make the same case against for most people who are under the age of 25. They're stupid. They don't know what they're doing. So I think the problem is not the age. I think the problem is that we're not giving people responsibility. And as long as we keep delaying that responsibility, hey, if I don't ever have responsibility, I never have to grow up. I can act like a kid until I'm 30.
Additionally, back then, so if a 13-year-old girl was married off, right? She married
Okay, yeah.
a 21-year-old
So-
guy. What responsibilities did she have? Generally,
Just generally just having
Not that
kids
hard,
and
not that hard to build a house, right? The houses weren't extravagant, and
Yeah.
they didn't have all these codes and requirements. They didn't even have electricity and stuff then.
well,
So
why
to
would
get his house set up on a particular piece of land and just kind of start a small farm, that could pretty much be done by anybody.
and it could be done
Just
again by anybody.
Anybody and everybody. No, not
So
nowadays.
why not? Have
You know
houses
how many
become?
freaking- you know
No,
how many
I know,
freaking you need to build a
but-
house?
Okay, so we
It's
are going. We are
hard.
repealing all those regulations. We're going
Most they
back to
don't.
the
You have
original.
go get a contractor who specializes
No.
in just permits.
I
they
know.
how to do this without fines. Or
Okay,
regulations
so
to get
you're
your house torn out.
you're assuming with what we currently have. I'm saying repealing it all back. I didn't state this in my case, but this would be kind of so
If you go back
everything.
to old log cabin days, what happens to
No,
these
I'm not
guys?
saying going back to
What
old log
happens to
cabin.
cars?
No, I'm not saying go back to old log cabin. I'm saying go back to the original Constitution. That means getting rid of all regulations, all of that other stipulations, all these codes and all that sort of thing.
But you don't understand why those were put in place. Me as an electrician, I have to have certain standards because if I wire your house like I'm a piece of shit and I've been drinking all day, and your house catches on fire and your entire family,
You're held
burns to
liable
death,
for it. So then why do you need
that's
some
why
law?
There are regulations.
Why do you
in
need?
case there is an asshole out there doing that for somebody else to come by and double check his work
Okay.
and say, yeah, the wiring's safe.
Okay, so
Tell me it's
why?
not gonna crack the foundation.
Why do you need a law to tell you that you don't want to burn down your customers' houses? It should be kind of, I want new customers, so I'm not going to let my
It's not a
customers'
law
houses
to
burn.
prevent that. It's a safeguard to protect the others who could be affected. Because let's say you're fine and you're a good person and you do your job normally, but then you walk in and you see your wife cheating on you with some Joe Blow from up the street, and you're having a shitty day. Now you got to go out and do your job. And are you thinking about what you're doing, or are you thinking about the guy screwing your wife? Everybody
I
has
don't-
bad days.
But I don't see how the regulation ends up helping this. All right, and, okay,
On,
but this,
I-
what we're
You're
forgetting.
confusing HUMAne's argument of getting rid of regulations with getting rid of qualifications. He never said to get rid of all happening to be qualified and certified to do something. He just said don't make it regulated. You
No,
can-
the
you can still- you can
qualifications
still
are
make it-
so you can hand a piece of paper and say, I've been doing electrical work for 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm a
Okay.
certified electrician.
All right.
The safety aspect is when an inspector comes in after, you have to get a permit. They come in, look at your work, and say, okay, I don't see any wiring that looks frayed. You didn't hit anything with a staple. Everything's good to go. I've double checked your work, and 2 people have signed up, you and a government inspector. That's the reason most of these safety precautions were put in place, because there were instances of houses burning down
Okay.
because of just shitty wiring, or plumbing cracking because the plumber did a crappy job and the whole house is flooded and the foundation's now cracked. there
The
are
question is,
instances.
does that need to be regulated on a federal level, or can that be regulated at a local or
Yeah, okay,
provincial
but I
or
think
state
we're getting lost in the weeds,
Yeah.
and if going
Yeah,
back
yeah.
to my original proposal, the biggest thing that I don't think anybody mentioned is what's to stop people from ignoring the Constitution, and the answer is nothing. There is nothing to stop people in a republic from ignoring the Constitution. It can say, "Hey, I'm this piece of paper that we all have to abide by," and if everybody's like, "Nope," well then it's as worthless as the paper it's written on. So even with the system the way I've set it up, even if people understand it and like, oh, this is why those laws are in place, there's still nothing
They
that.
accept it, but there still has to be a force to apply.
Yeah, they can be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, but I don't want to. There's nothing to say. Yeah, sure, that makes sense. That makes logical, but I don't want this government anymore. So they can just abolish
Okay,
it.
so, well,
That's-
But
let's
you
do
argue for
this.
what's
So-
a republic, and a republic is ruled by law.
No,
so you
but
still
all they
have
have to do is
law
ignore the law. The law, all they have to do
That's
is
why
ignore the law.
enforcement.
No,
You
no.
don't
How much-
argue for an anarcho
The
republic. You
the
argue for
law
a-
enforcement is by the people, and if the people are like, oh, well, stop enforcing the law, the republic crumbles. It can happen because it has happened. It's how our like the same sort of thing. Even with the structure I've put in place, over time, people can be like, no, get rid of the thing. I know why it's there. I don't want it because and it happens. The system will erode, and eventually the republic will cease to be a republic, and it goes into full chaos
Okay,
mode of
so-
people. Yeah. So
let's do that. How much time do we have left?
well, it's
How long were you
7:30. I was planning on doing this for about an hour and a half. We did get a little bit of a late start, but I did want you to pitch yours because that's gonna key into next week's. So
Well,
I think
is
we've.
there a way we just hold off till next week? Because it's not necessarily a point
But-
I'm supporting. It was just an idea I
Okay.
felt like discussing.
But are you
But
available
if we're on
next
the
week?
topic of government, I can try to be for a bit.
Okay. No, I want to give you a 15-minute because mine went longer than I thought it would, but. Because I
Well, I mean,
thought it
I'm
was
not even a
decent,
proponent
but
of it.
I saw that there was a lot of flaws, and I think you pointed out a lot of flaws in that proposal. So,
Yeah,
but
what I was gonna say is, I did some thinking on what we had talked about a few days ago, and I
Mhm.
was gonna try and just advocate for an ethno state. But in all honesty, I don't believe in those whatsoever. I think the only thing that exists is just geography.
yeah, I get
So I was
you.
having a little
So
trouble trying to build a case. But
Okay.
as I was doing some research, I started finding some other issues that a lot of people haven't considered. So I was wondering if maybe we could discuss that as it still relates to current government and maybe things we can try to correct in what would be our
Okay.
utopian type
all
government.
right. So
one thing.
okay,
I was
so
watching a
before
series
you
of
do that,
documentaries. Yeah.
yeah. So before you do that, so we were discussing this off stream, of discussing you doing the devil's advocate position, advocating for an ethno state, and I think
I tried.
yeah. So I
Because
want
see,
to
the whole
take a
point-
couple minutes to talk about that. Okay. So because this is what the alt right advocates for, and this is what Richard Spencer advocates for. So I think
It
everyone
sounds
has
like
heard.
a huge step back to mankind.
Yeah.
Just completely
Okay.
ass backwards.
So because you're not advocating for it, you're not building a case for it, I'm going to assume that people have heard Richard Spencer's argument for it. So I think we should take a couple of minutes and just rip it apart.
Well, his main consensus is that white people as a race have a general spiritual type of connection and general thought process, which comes to that stupid collectivism type thinking. And so if
Oh,
we
dude.
just huddled all these white people together in their own country, things would just go better. Because if you look at Europe, over the Dark Ages, things were fantastic. And I don't know what he was talking about.
Yeah, I don't know, because even he admits that Europeans fought all the time, and as far as he can tell, they are the white
No.
ethnos. Those are the
No,
same.
I can name.
Yeah.
I can name one benefit of an ethno state.
Mm,
Okay, go ahead.
People like Richard Spencer and the rest of the alt-right can no longer blame black people for the problems in America.
Oh, that's
okay. Well, they'll still find a way. The same way communists find a way to blame capitalism
They'll
when
say
their
it was
countries fail.
inherited from the previous governmental state.
They're like,
And
well, it's
it
because...
It's been 200 years, but we still need to weed out some of these problems from previous integration. Yeah, that's going to be the excuse.
I follow a lot of the alt-writers. Like, I follow Richard Spencer. I don't follow him on YouTube. I follow him on Twitter.
Yeah, he doesn't really do much on YouTube as far as... He does interviews and stuff, but he doesn't have his own content.
Yeah.
I used to follow Nick Fuentes until he went full retard.
Yeah.
He became about himself.
Yeah.
I follow James Alsop. I actually paid like $300 to $600 to get him out to Charlottesville, and I was really disappointed with the way that went. I paid the money because I wanted to hear what they were going to say, and they never even had the opportunity to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I will say Richard Spencer sounds like a fairly intelligent guy. He's put a lot of thought into it, but his main points on that he's focusing on do not make sense. His core foundation,
Yeah.
the
So
whole idea of it doesn't make sense. All his
okay.
approaches-
So I think
Yeah.
Richard is building a logically consistent argument based on a false premise. So if this is true, then all of these things, yeah, okay, it starts to make sense. But you're like, wait a minute, but what you started with isn't true.
I mean, if he looked at the general white population in the U.S. and saw how extremely diverse that is just in one country, there's no way he's going to say all white people, ever.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
like...
stupidest sentence. That's... You can't compare a guy in New York in a nice suit eating a $300 dinner with a redneck.
No, it's...
Well, see, that goes back to the American, what did you call it? American Republic or Americanized Republic?
I'm not sure what you mean, but
The
you're
form of
talking.
government you were advocating for?
I was talking about going back to. I was basically calling it America 2.0. So it was basically the same Constitution, but with these caveats.
Yeah.
More safeguards and more of a stable system.
Okay,
Oh.
so that's the same
Right.
problem that you'd run into with that.
Yeah.
Is with what you just pointed out with the New York $300 steak and the Southern redneck. Well, when it comes to becoming a citizen test or becoming an adult, a 14-year-old in we'll go an 18-year-old in New York City. An 18-year-old girl in New York City is a fucking bimbo, okay, on average.
Yeah.
An 18-year-old that grew up on a farm, worked her whole life, knows right from wrong, knows that she has to work for everything in life, down in, say, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee.
Okay.
18-year-old from that life, and 18-year-old from the city life, rural
Yeah.
life versus city life. The 18-year-old in the country can pass that test at 12.
Probably.
The 18-year-old in the city isn't going to pass that test until they're in their fucking 30s.
Yeah. And that's.
If they're feminists,
See,
they're
but
feminists,
that's.
they're not going to pass it until they're in their 50s.
So I think that is a problem with current society because
And
it's
then
just
they'll
a
claim that
hey.
as patriarchy.
Yeah, there is no requirement. It's just the have you made it to 18 without dying? All right, you're in. That to me, hey, you haven't won a Darwin Award. That's essentially what we do right now, and it delays that responsibility, so that this responsibility can be deferred till you're in your 40s. So I think those people, if they ever had to have responsibility, they would start to grow up. And I mean, this is something that's not new. I mean, if you ever watch one of these movies like I'm trying to think of. I mean, there's all kinds of movies and books about like the spoiled person who has to experience the real world, and they're like, oh, well, I guess maybe that I'm not. And then they grow up quick, right? Because they've had to experience life out on the streets, right?
Yeah. Sure, Oliver Twist.
Yeah, Oliver Twist, sort of. But I was thinking more like, The Prince and the
Big,
Pauper.
The movie.
The Prince and the Pauper, or
Big, the movie.
yeah, I guess Big.
With Tom Hanks.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, he was a kid and he was forced to be an adult, and then he grew up pretty quickly, right? He turned into the adult that he didn't want. So I think it's a level of responsibility, and once you have to have that responsibility, you grow up. And I think that's the reason why those people in New York being 18 are still stupid and vapid, is because they've never had to grow up. But that's just.
Well,
But again,
here's what I kind of wanted to discuss. So
Okay.
I really see no benefit to an ethno-state, especially in today's modern society where everything's global. I mean, I can go talk to someone in China just by getting on the internet.
Yeah, Skype.
What's the point?
Or Hangouts.
There is absolutely no point in staying segregated like that anymore. His main concern is that the white race may end up getting blended into the rest of the world, which I don't see that happening anytime soon, because typically most people of a particular race prefer people from their own race, and there are some people that do interracial mixing, and that's fine. And
Yeah.
eventually, maybe in another couple hundred years, 1,000 years, we may become more of a homogenous group of people. I don't care. We're still
Yeah,
people.
that's the point I wanted somebody to bring up. Oh, sorry.
There's actually sort of a reason why he has that fear, and if you look on YouTube, there's an interview with Richard Spencer and two black radio hosts, I think they are, and they straight up told him, they're like, your grandchildren are going to be black. They're going to look like us. And just the look on his face of like, no. They're like, no, face it. Your grandchildren are going to be black. And they're like, if not your grandchildren, your great grandchildren. It's just
Which is a bit silly.
Yeah, it's
Across the globe, the black race is still a minority on the entire planet. So why would a minority end up influencing the majority of genetics?
That's
I mean,
there's
there's
tanks.
2 billion Chinese people. 2 billion.
yeah. And odds are that
Not everybody on the planet is Chinese.
yeah, odds are everybody's gonna be either Indian or Chinese if you're talking about everybody interbreeding.
But
I do not
regardless,
have a problem with that.
if you look at an
Really good at
evolutionary
computer
standpoint,
services.
it would make sense for humankind to become homogenous.
Yeah. So that's one of the
Get rid of any race whatsoever and get rid of all that racial tension and garbage.
yeah, that's one of the points I wish somebody would have brought up during the stream, and I still have yet to hear anybody talk about. It's like, okay, it's like, oh yeah, well, if people keep intermixing and all this stuff, eventually the white people will disappear.
So you're an
So what?
atheist, but you also don't want to admit to scientific principles and the principle of evolution or the theory of evolution.
Yeah.
You're just denying what naturally exists.
Yeah, if the white race ends up being absorbed into some other race, so what? What have we lost? What is? It's because he thinks that there's something inherent about being white that is superior, which
Oh,
he claims not to be a white
told you earlier,
supremacist, but
he
yeah.
thought white people invented the nuclear family. He's off his rocker.
Okay, so
Yeah,
that's
in that debate.
okay. I do want to get back to what you were.
We lose gingers.
Yeah, I do want to get back to the point you were making. So I do want to set up. So this is what my plan is for the next 2 to 3 streams. I'm going to be streaming the Andy Worski Sargon versus Richard Spencer debate, and I'm going to be pausing the video and criticizing anytime either side makes a stupid mistake or any these points that I don't think very many people have touched on.
That was such a frustrating debate.
Oh,
Awesome
yeah.
to listen to, but so frustrating.
I had to keep pausing it every 2 to 3 minutes and be like, "Drah!" and yell at my screen and my TV, and then, okay, calm down, hit play again.
From all sides.
Sticks, I think, did relatively well. Sticks,
I did like Sticks, and I thought, what's his name?
J Fry,
JR?
or JF, yeah, Gene Francis.
Yeah.
Francis?
He came in, but he more
No,
just
Jeff
wanted in to kind
Francois.
of clarify what everybody was
Yes.
talking La La Land about and say, let's bring it together, guys.
Yeah.
So he didn't seem on one side or the other, but he's got a fantastic accent, and it seemed to just help.
He seemed to be on Spencer's side, but he was very good at articulating and trying to get the point. Okay, this is what Sargon was trying to
Not
say.
once did he
And
put Sargon down and say, hey,
Yeah.
you're totally wrong. He just said, okay, let me make sure we have your point across.
yes.
And I like that. I think those two guys did great. Everybody else, Andy wasn't really in it. He was just
No,
kind of like, hey, guys,
Yeah,
guys, in the background.
Guys. It was Reuben Report version 2.0.
Yeah. But it was fun to listen to, but also aggravating.
Yeah, so that is my plan. I'm going to cut some of the stream out on my own, because I mean this will be like the dead time or the time in between where it's just JF answering questions and the rest of them aren't there and that sort of thing. It is a 3-hour stream. I don't plan on doing the full thing. I only plan on talking about when there's the actual debate going on. So I'm going to try to trim it down to just the debate sections. and then I'm gonna go through pausing that and critique different both sides of that, because I think Sargon made
He's better than, or he should be better than that.
Yes.
He's degraded himself to just being a defensive flashback with Ludacris, and he just kept implying things that were not actually said.
Yeah, but I anticipate the majority of the stream being mocking Richard Spencer for not seeing things that are obvious. They're like, wait, how did you look?
Yeah. I mean, I had to pause that. I was listening to that at work, and when he's like, white people invented the nuclear family, I paused, took my headphones out, like, I gotta go outside or I'm gonna explode here.
Well,
that's the stupidest thing I ever heard.
Well, I also thought it was weird that he was saying that the left is individualistic and the right is collectivist, and I'm like, wait, what?
That's backwards. The right is individualist and the left is collective.
Okay.
In general.
All right, but so okay, it is 7:45. I don't want this to go too long because I've been going over. I went over the time for this, but I think we covered a lot.
Okay.
So, did you want to make any further?
Just like maybe 5 or 10.
Yeah, give it another 5 minutes so that way you can talk about your point, because yeah.
So it's not necessarily in advocation of a particular government type, but while I was thinking of this over the last week, I was noticing, and we already kind of hinted upon this earlier in the stream, that most of these political systems seem to revolve.
Yes.
And they build up off of another, and this one decays, another system comes up in its place, that devolves into whatever, anarchy, and then a small system of government builds up off of that, and it keeps cycling over.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I'm saying this has to do with population size. And communism, as we've already talked with before, sounds good on paper, and it actually works. And it has been proven to work on small communities, which is why they're called communities, or actual communes.
Yeah.
Where they each have their own designated role, like where the monks each have their own specific duties and tasks, but they're all like-minded, they all have the same beliefs, and they all understand that they're in there to support each other. It is an agreement that they have come in on of their own education.
Yeah, that is a key point.
So it works in small groups, and it's the same way a family works, is actually socialist or communist.
Yeah, and
that's does not expect to get paid from his wife or his children for the work he does around the house, and the wife doesn't expect to get paid for raising the children. It is all, everyone has their role, and as the children get older, they start to increase what they do with their role, helping around the house if the parents are teaching them correctly. So those work as small, very small, communist/socialist type entities, and that's about as far as it gets. You get any bigger than a small community, and it falls apart because there's too much diversity with people.
And the other thing is the voluntary aspect, which is this is why the family unit works pretty well up until the children start to want their independence. And if the parents keep trying to control them, well, then that child is going to rebel, and they they leave, or they seek independence and that sort of thing. They seek to divorce their parents. That's so. If you had,
also saying,
so it has to be entered voluntarily.
Reaches a certain size, starts to turn socialist and fully democratic because there's too much diversity, and then instead of becoming based off of rules and regulations and basic principles, it becomes of who controls the mob, which would be your celebrities and your people who are on top, your oligarchy on the top. And this happens with every society. So is there a way to anticipate that and prevent that from massive civilizations with millions of
I don't think so. I think the only way to do that is to just keep
anytime type of government would work for a multi-million citizen entity.
It's like the only way
now,
that could work.
Even the U.S. is slowly degrading, and people who are paying attention see it, and it's gonna happen. It's gonna collapse.
So,
at some point.
So I think the only way that could work is once a government gets to a certain size, it has to split. It would have to separate. So that might work. Is if we had a system like
once things small, but then you also decrease. The one thing that is good about, I wouldn't say collectivism, but having larger groups of people centralized is technology and innovation. That's the reason that Europe exploded during the Dark Ages and afterwards is because those civilizations, they're the various countries all started grouping together and all started becoming more free thinkers and thinking, how can we do better?
Mm-hmm.
And it caused a massive explosion, the Renaissance. But that doesn't happen in small communities. They don't have Renaissance in small communities because there's no need for it.
Yes.
It only happens when societies start to become larger and bigger.
So the problem is
progress is once it becomes so big, and a democratic republic or a republic can no longer sustain such a diversity, which is what we're having with Western culture. What's the next step? Because no one's ever gotten there. It either collapses and starts over, or we're here.
Yeah. So if that's the case,
step would be to take look at the size of America. Okay, the size of the United States of America is freaking huge. We're pretty much to the point right now where we are too big to sustain the needs of each individual locality.
Yeah.
So the next logical step would be to divide the country into smaller countries, and basically they still have it basically be a union of independent countries that can govern themselves under the same general constitution.
The funny
They're
thing
not
is
answerable to each other.
yeah.
Right now, the way I could see it splitting would be West Coast, East Coast would split off, and Central U.S. would remain intact because Central U.S. is largely conservative and still has generally the same idea on the type of government and beliefs that they want to uphold. And without Central U.S., they would collapse completely because they have no food.
Yeah, but the problem with that is because I think we had a conversation with BTK. I was making a joke about that they're talking about New California becoming a 51st state or whatever.
And you said I took it too far.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a good point. I was just joking. I was like, well, how about they, instead of them becoming the 51st state, they just leave the United States, get rid of them.
I mean, I'm
but
for that, yeah.
But you brought up a good point that the entire reason we absorbed California into the United States is so that we could defend that border. We could defend that coastline. Because if you had the East Coast and the West Coast separate, and then the center United States as one country, that leaves those two halves exposed on the outside. They've got no real way to defend themselves, and the center country has a problem of if one of those countries outside of them fails, their entire defense is gone, right? So I think it would make
necessarily the defense is gone, but it would make each coast more susceptible to attack because they're now separate entities. But more likely, they would collapse due to overpopulation and not enough product, not enough produce, not enough.
I think it might make sense to divide the country kind of either diagonally. Like, so if you did it diagonally from the top to the bottom and then split that way.
I mean, and when you look at each election cycle and you look at the maps with the blue and the red states, it's already fairly split up. And you can see that the majority of central U.S. is red while the coasts are nice and blue.
Okay.
So it's already split up based off of political inclinations.
Okay, so
to divide it up any other way, I don't know a group of conservatives that wants to get cut off from the main country and get lumped in with a bunch of Democrats.
So what if we provided some incentive so if we split the United States into two different countries?
I think the only natural evolution is it's just going to collapse, and we'll see what builds up after.
Yeah. So if we saw this coming and we wanted to prevent it, if we had some kind of measure, like, okay, we're splitting the United States into the east and west sides. If you are conservative, we want you on the west side, and if you are progressive, regressive, whatever, leftist or whatever, I don't know what term they want to call themselves, then you would go to the east side. And so yes, that means that people in California would end up having to move, but there's plenty of there's coastline on the east side or whatever, or we could flip it the other way around and have conservatives all on the east coast. Either way, this would require.
I would prefer the west coast.
This would require. Yeah, this would require a decent number of people to move. Yeah, I think it was probably a smaller number of people to move if a conservative was the left half. right? Because you got California, Oregon, and Seattle, but the rest of the United States is pretty much conservative everywhere else on the West Coast. So people from the Midwest would end up having to move over and all that sort of thing. But I think we could create a peaceable separation of the two, and then there would be two halves of the United States that could work together, but they would be independent countries. That might be a possibility.
See, the way I envision that is that would be more of a purge, conservatives or just the general free-thinking, self-interested, free market type people would be purging out all of the socialistic garbage. They'd form their own country. They'd say, hey, everybody come on in, open borders, and they would be dissolved within 50 years. They wouldn't exist as a country.
I have a Canadian friend that is a trucker that I talk to, and me and her have talked quite a bit about something along those lines, because if you look at Canada on the west coast, it's red. It's where most of their conservatives are. If you look at America on the west coast, it's blue. Me and her jokingly said, well, what if we take the blue Americans, send them up to Canada, bring down the red Canadians, and problem solved?
Yes. I'm 1,000% in support of that.
Well, all of those celebrities said they were going to move to Canada, and they're still here.
That sounds fantastic. Canada can be democratic, leftist.
Oh. Yeah, and we can get along with Canada.
Stay conservative, and we'll just keep the border. And hey, Canada's a nice place. How's it going up there? And there's plenty of land, plenty of commerce, and let's combine the countries and just split the politics. Since Canada, the main politics that are in play up there seem to be very liberal leftist in the first place, they're well suited for that.
Yeah,
they could absorb New York
borders, so we can just go to Canada whenever the hell we want to.
And they can have all the open borders they want, since there's no borders up there, right? Who's going to immigrate to Canada? Just U.S.? They don't touch anybody else? And the U.S. will be like, all right, Mexico, you're done.
Well, I also think that I wouldn't want to absorb Mexico as it is now, because it's crime-ridden hellhole. Or shithole in the president's words. But, ideally, we would want to absorb Mexico, so then all we have to worry about is this little tiny bit of land, and then everything else is water.
Or we build a wall first, and then absorb Mexico, and keep that as a demarcation zone until we can clear it.
Why build a wall? No, see, what you do is you push into Mexico all the way down to the Panama Canal.
Yeah, right? All the way down to the Panama Canal.
And you just push everybody that's a leftist onto the other side of the Panama Canal. If they try to swim back.
Wait. Why onto the other side? Why not just into the Panama Canal?
Well, like I said, if they try to come back over, you can shoot them. And, it's a much smaller, much easier to defend. Line of demarcation than the U.S.-Mexico border.
So
Trump could have his wall and only spend $1,000. I mean, come on.
Yeah, had we.
Yeah, he could buy the wall from Home Depot.
Yeah, what is it? It's not NAFTA, is it, right? North Atlantic, whatever. Whenever they did that treaty between Canada and Mexico, that's when we should have been like, okay, let's just make one big country, and then all we have to worry about is our ocean borders. That should have happened back then, but it didn't. But now it's kind of like, ooh, do we really want Mexico to join? Canada, sure, you're in. We got no problem, as long as we don't have to pay for your social system and all that sort of thing.
And I think people might actually be more inclined to agree with that if we were like, Canada, we still have a truce. We're in an alliance. If you're getting attacked, we're going to defend you guys, even though we don't like your leftist ideologies. If you collapse on yourself, that's your own problem. We're not helping with that. But if someone tries to invade, we're going to kick some shit out of somebody.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, we got some safe backing.
I have a couple friends that are Mexican and live in Mexico, like deep Mexico. And I was talking to them about the whole the wall and the alt-right ethno state and everything. And this guy, one of my friends, he's like, just send all the blacks down here. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, we hate them, we will kill them, and you won't have to worry about it. I'm like, oh my god.
Well, that's
one possible. I don't know if I call that a solution.
It's a final solution. All right, so I think we're gonna end it here. So I did go longer than expected on this, but I think we touched on a lot of stuff. And yeah, BTK, you are welcome back every week. It was very, very good points and well thought out, and that's what I'm hoping to build this stream more on, that sort of thing. So I've noticed over the past few weeks it's kind of divulged more and more towards shouting matches, and that's partially my fault and partially the other people I've had on, but
the conversations tend to go very askew and then argued on weird tangents that don't matter. But
yeah.
You seem like a pretty intelligent and thought-provoking person.
Yeah, so I still, like... Oh, I was about to say...
Once you pop that offline button, we can keep talking.
Okay. Yeah, but so I do want to clarify to the other people who are on the Cancer Podcast Twitter DMs, you guys are welcome back as well. Just give me some way to contact you. It's pretty much everybody but S-Man, Josselman, and Ham. I don't have... And actually, from what I saw from Bahamut Reborn or whatever...
I wouldn't mind having a stream with Ham.
All right, so Sinister will talk you up. I'm done with Ham. That guy frustrates me beyond all reason.
He kind of cracks me up.
So the rest of you that are on that, if you end up catching this, so Lonely Wolf, really good guy. Would love to have you back on my stream. Aspie was on.
He has a very nice voice.
Yeah.
I like the accent and everything. It's nice to listen to.
And I wish Milner, I don't know how, it's the thing that,
Mjolnir?
it's Thor's hammer. Mjolnir.
Mjolnir.
Yeah, Mjolnir's man. He was really good to talk to as well. We talked about the drug advocation and all that sort of thing. So he was really interesting and really, really well thought out. So I hope to have guests more like that. So even though I disagreed with his points, like the fact that he was willing to have a civil debate and all that sort of thing, and yeah, that's what I'm hoping to build these streams off of. So I think I'm going to end it here. Thanks for joining, and next week will be the start of my Richard Spencer analysis. I know it's like way behind the curve, but it's something that I've been looking forward to doing, and I'm like, man, I want to do a full video on it, but nah, it's just too time consuming. I'll try to do it in a stream.
Yeah, that was like a 4-hour stream.
Yeah, so I'm not going to do the full thing, but I'm going to...
2.5 of the debate, I think.
Yes, but I'm going to do it over several weeks, so we're talking about probably half an hour at a time. So I think I'm going to reduce the entire stream to like 30 minutes, and we'll do 30 minutes a week. Because, I mean, there's enough in a 30-minute to break it down and analyze stuff that we could end up talking for an hour and a half off of the 30-minute section. All right, so I think that I will end it there. Thanks for joining me, and my project Funfair is in full swing, sort of. There's probably another month and a half of development with the team that I hired. Looks pretty good so far from what they've sent me. I've been testing that pretty thoroughly. So I like what's going on right now, but it'll still be... it's still not going to be ready until April sometime. Because we still have to do testing, and I've got to incorporate my part of it, because they're building about half of it, and I'm building the other half, and we got to put the two together in March, and then hopefully be ready by April for the full launch after testing. But I have started an Indiegogo and a GoFundMe. I'm trying to raise $10,000 for this project in total. I am not going to raise the full 20, like if both of them end up maxing out for whatever reason. That seems ridiculous. My cap for the overall is 10,000. Anything above that will be towards the full. It'll be more towards extra features, because that extra 10,000 is just to get the beta version, or what I'm calling the beta version, out, and that is the bare bones. Hey, just to get the system up and launched. And that bare bones, I don't want people to say, oh, the bare bones is not going to have anything on it. The bare bones is the full payment system. So everything I talked about in the videos and that's on the website that's talking about payment and sending money from one place to the other, the lottery system and all that, that is part of the foundation of it. What I'm talking about, extra features, I'm talking about like video hosting and incorporating other applications into Funfair and that sort of thing. That's the extra bells and whistles and the things that'll help me compete with bigger companies. So I just want to clear that all up. If you have extra time or money and you want to help me with that, spread the word about Funfair and donate on those sites. I will send the link in the description after I close out the stream. And thanks for joining me. Let's see. Oh, okay.
yep.
Go ahead.
Well, it's not really a plug. It's if you want a simple but yet fairly informative 10-minute video on government, if you go to my channel, it's BTK. It's the very first video I ever posted. It's called Government. It's pretty informative.
Okay. All right. And I will link your channel in the description after this is uploaded to my channel. So I'm going to stop the stream right here. Thanks for joining me, everybody, and thanks for Aspie as well. I know you had to leave early. All right, that was a pretty good discussion. I hope we have more like this in the coming weeks.
All right, bye.